Today we're opening up the book of Genesis, continuing to unpack the life of Joseph as we talk about Potiphar, prison, and the promise of God with my friend Corey Russell. You don't want to miss it. We are in part 3 of our 4-part Life of Joseph series with Corey Russell. You've been back 3 weeks in a row, dude.
I'm loving it.
The fact
you
that
can't get rid of me.
I can't get rid of you. But dude, I'm looking forward to unpacking this together. You know, as we sit here, it's not like we sat and planned. You say this, you say this. Yeah. But bro, these past 2 weeks have been so encouraging to me. But we're at a point in Joseph's story now where the rubber meets the road.
Yes.
We're about to talk this week about Potiphar's wife, and prison. Yeah. Look, if you get a word from the Lord, it doesn't mean that it's smooth sailing.
No, it'll test you.
It will test you. Psalm 105, the word of the Lord tried Joseph. As we jump into 39, I just want to preface Genesis 39 by saying I highlighted 4 things in this chapter, and I'm gonna talk about it for a second, then I want you to jump and lead us. Yeah. Chapter 39, verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph. Chapter 39, verse 4, Joseph found favor. Chapter 39, verse 21, but the Lord was with Joseph. Chapter 39, verse 23, the Lord was with him. 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 Corey, when we have a revelation that God is with us, that changes everything.
Yes.
It changes everything, not just in our hearts, but the people around us. Listen, our deliverance and our testimony is not just for us. It's for those around us who are watching God. You know, I'm reminded, Psalm 40, David, I waited patiently for the Lord. He took me out of the pit, not so dissimilar, took me out of the pit, set my feet on a rock, put a new song in my mouth. Many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. I'm telling you, God allows pits. God allows famines, not just for him to show his provision to me, but so that many will see and put their trust in the Lord.
This is the plan of redemption. And I imagine Joseph's heart was broken on that journey, you know, from the land to Egypt. He's broken, and yet he's going to get sold to Potiphar, one of the chief officers. God's with him, though. And this is the thing that you see, is he's working out his own pain and betrayal and issues, but yet the grace, the favor of God that's on his life, whatever he touches, even in these tough seasons, God blesses.
Come on.
Yeah. And I think that's what you see happen from this. And he's going to go lower. Yeah. He's going to keep going lower and lower and lower. And the Bible makes it clear God's with him.
God's with him. Chapter 39, verse 1, Joseph has been taken down. Potiphar, the Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there.
Look at what it says in verse 5. It says, so it was from the time that he ends up making him overseer of his whole house and all that he had, that the Lord blessed. Look at this. It's almost like, you know, the Obed-Edom story. The Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And so he's walking in this favor. And so whatever he's around comes underneath blessing.
It's amazing. If I were Joseph, you know what I'd be thinking right about now? That vision's about to come true.
Whoa.
That vision's about to come true. Look at all of this good that's happening to me. But obviously, we're about to get into the drama of the story.
And the blessing of the Lord was on him, that he had in the house and in the field. Thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. All right, and now we see all this favor, and now we're about to see another, test that's going to come. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph. And she began to try to get him to lie with her, but he refused. Talk to us about this, Scott.
These 3 words are some of my favorite words from the book of Genesis.
Oh, my goodness.
But he refused. Do you know that every time there is a call on a man or woman's life, there is going to be diabolical opposition to that.
Yes.
And the devil's going to do everything he can to sway us. We're living in a time and season where we're hearing stories of men and women who refused to refuse.
That's right.
And unfortunately, they and others are shipwrecked because of their inability to say no to temptation. Bro, I'm in a season where I'm trying to lose weight.
You're looking good, man. You're looking good.
Thank you. But can I just tell you, every time I walk by my snack cupboard and I see an M&M, I'm in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, but he refused. But I'm like, but I've been doing so good. I owe myself one M&M.
Yes.
But one M&M turns into a bag, and before you know it, you're just stuffing your face. If I can't refuse stupid peanut M&Ms, what am I going to do when a voluptuous temptation walks before me? I really think, bro, as men, and I'm not saying women don't have their own temptations, but as men, can I just tell you, we are daily faced with an opportunity to say no to temptation.
That's right.
Whether it's looking at something we shouldn't look at on a device, listening to gossip and slander, looking at things we shouldn't look at, desiring things we shouldn't desire. Joseph is a man, I'm reminded, what does it say in Hebrews? That Jesus was tempted in every way like us, but was without sin.
That's right.
It's so beautiful. So as we're even talking about Joseph as a type of Jesus, he had every opportunity. Bro, this guy lived a rough life up until now. He was thrown in a pit. You would think he could say, I have it coming to me. This is, thank you, God, you're giving me an opportunity. But he refused. May we be men forever who refuse the diabolical temptations that come our way so that God can be glorified.
But he refused. And I just want to say that's one of the main ploys of the evil one. He's seeking to, again, abort the plan. Abort the plan. Stop the plan. And what would have happened if Joseph would have given way?
Israel might have been destroyed forever.
That's what I believe is contained inside, because God is setting up. And I think we need to have when we're in the midst of sexual temptation, when we're in the midst of feeling pressed on every side, if we could but see what this is leading unto, God is taking many of you through, many people that are even watching this, and they're like, they don't understand that the trials they're walking through is about setting a stage for something that's going to save many lives around the corner. If we can navigate these seasons.
That's the key. We don't see the end.
No.
We see right now. Don't look at wine while it's red in the cup. In the end, Proverbs says it bites. Oh, to have a revelation of the end. It's really amazing. So you would think he refused. He says, how then could I do this great evil and sin against God? Verse 9, as she spoke to Joseph day after day. Bro, we applaud ourselves just simply by saying no to the M&M today. It's going to be there day after day.
And he kept saying no.
Come on, he kept saying
Verse
no.
11, but it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do his work. None of the men were inside. So she caught him by the garment saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and he fled. He says, flee sexual immorality is what Paul says. And he fled and he ran outside. And so it was when she saw that he had left it, that she called to the men. And now it's going to get twisted. And that's another part of the journey with Joseph right here is when there's lies. When there's lies about your character, statements about what you've done, and you've walked in holiness. He did everything right. And yet she twisted the whole thing and used this to say, he's coming after me. And he's trying to rape me. And and the Lord's going to allow it. The Lord is going to allow the false, accusations and the season of trying the integrity. So it's one thing, okay, it's blatantly wrong. Okay, what the brothers did, that's wrong. But now she's lying and God lets it happen. And now he's going to prison over a lie.
If there was ever a time that I would think that Joseph could even say, Lord,
that would have been a dark time.
That would have been a dark, dark time until the time came to pass. The word of the Lord tried Joseph. We need to get our minds and our hearts into a position of recognizing if we're following what the Lord calls us to do, the devil is going to do everything he can to get us to shake our fists at God. I'm reminded of Jesus in the garden. He's about to face the most hideous death. And I love his humanity. He says, Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. God doesn't mind when we simply say,
is there another way?
Is there another way? But Jesus didn't stop there. He said, nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. As we're talking about Joseph, it just seems like he's willing to walk through whatever God sends his way because there's resurrection on the other side.
So he goes to prison now. She lies, says he's trying to rape me, and lies. God allows it to happen, and now he goes to prison. Look in verse 20.
Chapter 39, verse 20.
And it says this, that Joseph's master took him and put him in the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in prison. Verse 21. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy. And he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And so the keeper of the prison put everything underneath Joseph's hand. He was leading and over them. Whatever they were doing, it was his doing. The keeper, he did not look into anything that wasn't under. Joseph had authority in the prison. He goes from Potiphar to prison, and but yet whatever he did, the Lord made him prosper. And here we go.
Come on.
And God is now going to set up a stage. Now, this is interesting. I was thinking about this, and even when preparing for this, the issue of dreams. And how God uses dreams and in hours of transition. I want to encourage people. There is so much, dreaming a reality. From Joseph's story, he gets awakened at 17 with dreams that even got him into this boat. And it's going to be dreams that's going to get him out of the boat. It's going to be dreams that's going to launch him.
I love it.
Now look at this. But we're going to see the other side. So we're going to see that there are a couple of guys that are in the prison with him. A butler and the baker of the king of Egypt. They had offended the Lord, and Pharaoh was angry, sent them down there, and the captain gave Joseph charge over them. All right, look at verse 5. And it says that the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were confined in the prison, had a dream. Both of them in the same night. Interesting. Each man's dream in one night, and each man's dream with his own interpretation. So he came in there and he goes, why are you guys sad? And so they're going to share their dream. And he, in verse 9, the short of it is this, is that the chief butler told his dream to Joseph and said, behold, in my dream, a vine was before me, and in the vine, 3 branches. It's 3 days. It was as though it budded, its blossoms shot forth, and its clusters brought forth ripe grapes. The Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. I took the grapes, pressed them into the cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. Joseph said, this is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh's going to lift up your head and restore you to your place, and you're going to put Pharaoh's cup in his hand according to the former manner. But look at this. Now, this is interesting right here, Scott. So he gives him the first one. Butler, it's good news for you, buddy. You're about to get restated, restored back to your place. Good days in 3 days. Look at what Joseph said. And this lets us know Joseph isn't ready to get out of prison. Look at what he says. But remember me when it is well with you, and please show kindness to me. Make mention of me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. For indeed, I was stolen away from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done nothing here that they should put me in the dungeon. He still wasn't dead yet.
You said this is an indication that he wasn't ready to.
No, he wasn't ready to enter in.
Because?
He's still holding on to what they did to him. He hadn't let it go yet.
Oh, bro.
This is unfair. This is wrong. My brother sold me here. He's still lost in his brother's story. I think he's still working through anger. He's still working through, when am I going to get out of this mess? And he was using the dream in the interpretation, and he was looking like, okay, I've given you a dream. Now open a door for me.
Go ahead. Keep going. I don't want to interrupt you. Keep going.
The short of it is this: the other guy, the baker, has a dream, and it's bad for him. It's good for the butler, bad for the baker. He goes, in 3 days, hey buddy, I hate to tell you this, you're going to be hung. You're going to be hung. It's going to be 3 days bad for you. But look at what he said. He gives him the 3 things, and I Oh, I love this. And it says in verse 21, it says that he restored the chief butler to his butlership again.
Yeah.
And he placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand, but he hung the chief baker as, look at this, and Joseph had interpreted them. Look at verse 23.
Yep.
Yet the chief butler did not remember Joseph, but forgot him.
Yeah.
God did divine amnesia. Divine amnesia.
Dude, I love that. I'm going to write that down as soon as we're done. Isn't it interesting? Over and over in the previous chapter, it says the Lord was with him. The Lord didn't forget him, but the man forgot him. And you mentioned the word shipwreck maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. In the midst of these situations, if we get our eyes and our desires on men remembering us, we are about to be shipwrecked. Absolutely. Because men will always fail you. Absolutely. The word of the Lord tried Joseph. When God says yes, he means yes. Unequivocally, he keeps his covenant to 1,000 generations, but the devil's going to do everything he can through the failings of man, through divine amnesia to get us shipwrecked. Keep on going, bro. I love it.
This is where I want to kind of think about this. Just look at the start of 41, verse 1. And then it came to pass at the end of 2 full years.
2 years.
2 years. It's almost like I just see the butler walking out of the prison. Joseph says, remember me. Yeah. Get me out of here. Use this to break through into a new season. Yeah. He goes, yeah, I got you. I don't even know who he is. And he's not going to remember until Pharaoh's dreams. All of a sudden, God's going to wait. He needed those last 2 years to, I think, work the final death. Something happened. Because as we're going to find out probably in next week's podcast or whatever, you didn't do this to me. God did this. God sent me here. And that is a transition. That is the work of forgiveness and of surrendering to the plan of God and to his wisdom, is understanding people didn't do this to me.
Wow.
God was setting up a scenario.
So profound, because you said when we were talking about verse 14 and verse 15 of 40 that he wasn't ready to get out because he was saying, I was kidnapped.
Yes.
He wasn't saying God sent me here. No. Bro, brilliant. I can't wait for next week's podcast. This is amazing. Thank you so much. But before I just close out, I'm just thinking, 2 years in prison, we've got prison. Prison is pretty swanky these days. That's probably air conditioned. Yeah. They probably have at least cots in a room. Yeah. I mean, when you think of prison 3,500 years ago, dude, there was no light. There was dirt floor. What must have been going through Joseph's head 2 years, day in and day out, of being in a place where, naturally speaking, you don't feel God. Do you know, you familiar with Richard Wurmbrand?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Richard Wurmbrand was a dear friend of my family's. Oh, my goodness. Every year he would come and speak at our church in Arizona. And this is what he said. He said, the true sign of our relationship with God is not in times of revival, but when we're alone in a prison cell. That's going to be the true test of where our relationship is with God. This man spent 13 years in prison, 3.5, I think, in solitary confinement. And he wrote a book called Tortured for Christ. And it was in the midst of these kinds of situations. His wife, if I'm not mistaken, bro, was put in a torture box, which is where she was filled with the Holy Spirit. So we're in a place where other people's minds go berserk and they go crazy. God met with this precious couple in prison. And when they came out of prison, they started Voice of the Martyrs, an amazing organization. 2 years forgotten in a place where nobody would go. And it's in those times where God shapes us. Close us out, bro. We got a minute.
We talked about Psalm 105 in the very first session. I think it's so interesting because in Psalm 105, verse 18, it says that Joseph was sold as a slave. Then it says this, they hurt his feet with fetters and he was laid in irons. I mean, that right there, why does the psalmist need to tell us his feet were hurt? Because he's telling you, he's bringing you into the imprisonment.
Yeah.
What the pain that Joseph was living in, the physical pain that he was living in. And then it says this, until the time that the word of God came to pass. And God is using those last 2 years, I believe, to eradicate, to deliver, to drive out all unforgiveness and bitterness out of Joseph. So that by the time the door gets opened, he's a brand new man. And he's a man who understands God did this. God set this up. And I think he needed to work that in so that he could extend that mercy and grace. And that's why he's the picture of Jesus like nobody else.
I love it. I can't wait for next week's podcast. We're going to close this out, friends. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, when we're done, I'm going to tell you how you can get in touch with Corey's ministry, download all of his stuff. He's an amazing blessing to me as a friend and a blessing to the body of Messiah around the world. If today's podcast has been a blessing, share it. Join us at togetherforisrael.org. Sign up for our emails. You can come on our mailing list. We'd love to bring you to Israel with us. Sometimes just write to us, Scott at togetherforisrael.org. We'll answer all of your questions. Until next week, I love you.